Welcome to Symplicity Conversations, the podcast where business, culture, and community come together to inspire and empower. I'm your host, Catherine Ripley. Each week, we'll explore meaningful conversations about how today's business landscape is shaped by innovation, relationships, and the people behind the progress. From actionable insights and stories from industry leaders to topics like customer experience, fostering strong business relationships, and the role of automation, we've got you covered. Whether you're an entrepreneur navigating growth, a leader focused on building lasting connections, or someone interested in how culture and community drive success, Symplicity Conversations is here to guide you. If you're ready to turn challenges into opportunities and make meaningful strides in your business and community, subscribe now and join the conversation. Get ready to simplify complexity and make an impact with Symplicity Conversations. Welcome to Symplicity Conversations, where we explore the intersection of business, leadership, community, and technology. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Wendy Harmon, Vice President of Channel Marketing at RingCentral. We'll explore her path to the C-suite and what it takes to lead at a public tech company, her vision for women in leadership, and the future of communication technology. But let's first start with our Symplicity Insight. This is our famous quote of the day, and I love this quote. I saw her in person last year at an event, and it was amazing. It's from Oprah Winfrey. Mm-hmm. Surround yourself with only people who are going to lift you higher. And, before that event last year, I wouldn't say I was a fan of Oprah. I never watched her show, and I just didn't know her or her work. I mean, I knew she was so impactful, but when I watched her at an Econ Club meeting, and I literally said, I think I fell in love with Oprah Winfrey because her presence and the way she spoke, and you could tell what she believed. I'm like, she's amazing, and it was that moment where I'm like, oh my God, yeah, but I can see her saying this, right?
Absolutely.
Surround yourself with only people who are going to lift you higher. That's pretty amazing. But first, let's talk about subscribing to Symplicity Conversations to hear more about leaders shaping the future of business and community, for sure. Like, comment, and share is what we say. All right, Wendy.
Hello.
I'm so excited for you to be here.
I am happy to be here as well.
We're going to talk about leading with purpose in a global tech firm, and just, navigating your career. So you've had just an amazing career, in marketing strategy. I mean, RingCentral has been the number one UCaaS provider tech company for 9 years running. Walk us through your career path and kind of what drew you into that space.
Yeah, you'll be very surprised because it was, I think, unconventional, but I feel so lucky that I walked this walk. So I was, and speak about community, I was a young woman just out of college and unfortunately dealt with a death in the family, my father. And his community surrounded me. And one woman in particular, who was vice president of development for a large ERP company, said, Wendy, come here. Let me teach you the trade. Oh, wow. And so I started in the engineering team. So, and we'll talk later probably about men and women navigating that space. But there were, it was 1 to 5, 1 woman to 5 men. And
right.
Anyway, so what that opportunity gave me was a chance to demonstrate who I was as an individual and how my work ethic, which led me to my first international assignment, which was when I was 28 and went to London for 3 years to implement software that we had just developed in-house. So that was a massive experience for me, and and one that I'll never forget. Had my first son in London,
Wow.
came back and worked at a variety of roles within that ERP company before getting tapped on the shoulder by a very small startup. There were 20 employees based out of London wanting to start a U.S. business. And they said, would love you to join us. So I was Wendy, the pre-sales consultant, Wendy, the installation consultant, Wendy, the support consultant.
I love it.
Wendy, the trainer, Wendy, and that company I stayed for 15 years until we sold to a private equity firm.
Wow.
And that's where I really had the opportunity to not only leverage this individual contributor work ethic, but then also grow a business and hone my management skills in an environment that was really comfortable. Took some time off after that opportunity, and then RingCentral just landed in my lap. You'll love this. I saw a LinkedIn post from a woman that I had worked with. She was a recruiter at my previous company, and her post said, "Come meet the women executives of RingCentral."
Wow.
And I went, that's interesting. That's interesting because you're highlighting women. You're highlighting the fact that these are the executives. This is how this company is growing. And I said, I'd love to go meet. And the rest is history. 12 interviews later. Wow. And I was at RingCentral. So I'm super happy by that journey.
Wow. That's just incredible. Incredible. How about, let's talk about navigating all of that. Because how long have you been with RingCentral now?
5 years. Just hitting my 5-year mark.
Wow. So talk about what's unique about navigating leadership with this public company, because you went bigger company, then you went small,
very small,
that grew, and now you're with a big, huge public company.
Yes.
So how is that navigating that leadership compared to other environments that you've been in?
I'd lie if I said it was easy. It was actually very difficult. And the main reason I think initially was because in the smaller company, I had the opportunity to influence across all aspects of the business. But yet at RingCentral, I appreciated and was happy to do the best I could in my, I won't say silo because that has negative connotations. It's not. It's in my area. And learning to dial it back to look specifically at what I could do within my area of this much, much larger company. So it was a challenge. It took me probably a good year to kind of settle in. Also, it was new for me. I had done marketing per se, in the fact that any small company, everybody's a marketeer, right?
Right, exactly.
So to actually being focused on how can I build programs that support people like yourselves to continue to grow and develop your organization. And I think once I honed in on that's what my focus should be, then I really could settle into doing the best job possible in that particular area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, as a woman in a senior role, I mean, you kind of alluded to it. There's lots of men.
Yes.
And like we were just, celebrated the top, seven organizations that sell RingCentral. I was the only female organization, right?
Absolutely.
Female-led organization. And, that can be challenging, right? So how do you overcome some of those challenges as you're navigating your role of maybe being the only female at the table?
It's, I'll again lie if I said it was easy. It's tricky on a daily basis. What I have maybe learned over the years is that the impact I can make, the greatest impact I can make, has to do with doing my job really well, better than other people around the table.
Yep.
You'll appreciate that.
Yep.
And using that as an example of what women can achieve, as opposed to I've got to alter who I am to fit the audience of the people around the table, and to try and not focus too strongly on the fact that I'm the only one, because that can be very demoralizing.
Yeah.
And that can can lead me down a potentially defeatist route, which I'm not that as a human. So I have to really just continue to focus on doing the best possible job I can and not trying to alter who I am for the room I'm in, with the people I'm in.
Well, and I think making sure we're tapping as many females to come into the space as we can. And, I love giving the right job to the right person, regardless of gender. But if you can support and encourage and provide development for females, that's a great opportunity. And I think, at the end of the day, we have to be optimists, right? And just be positive. Instead of complaining about being the only woman, celebrate being the only woman, because there's a difference. There's a perspective there that you don't want to go down the negative path. You just want to acknowledge it happens. We go to a lot of conferences, and a lot of times the panels are mostly men. But when you do have the opportunity to be on a panel, you really need to show up and do the job well, and make sure that you're raising your hand. And we talk a lot about on the podcast about career and how do you navigate. And it's important for executives to come on here and say, look, you can do this too. I had a journey. I was at an entry level point.
Absolutely.
We all have chapters, right? This chapter, and we pull different pieces out.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And a story came to mind way back at the beginning of my management experience. And, women kind of in technology can fall into very specific roles. You would expect them in marketing. You will expect them in this case, it was quality assurance. You would expect them, you've got the engineers that are men. And I remember specifically a fantastic quality assurance analyst coming to me one day and saying, I just really want to shift to an engineering position. And I thought to myself, absolutely, you've got everything that it takes. Let's break down that barrier. And she was massively successful in that. But so looking for those opportunities to break that, but not in a big, bold way, but in a really meaningful and impactful way for an individual or a group or something like that.
Let's talk a little bit about channel marketing and maybe communications in the tech world. What trends are you really watching closely right now?
I think there is a lot of noise at the moment. And so from my perspective, thinking about the partners in the RingCentral community, and there's a lot for partners to digest. So what I talk to the team about is, let's start, and this is my personal philosophy, is you've got to start with a guiding principle. You've got to start with a strategy or a view or a perspective, and then drill into where that goes. So when you look at RingCentral and you see all the products and the shifting use cases and business transformation we're trying to do, I need and I focus on our partners understanding that the very first thing is that RingCentral, offers this platform in which you can do many, many things. So instead of digging into one specific area and then trying to feed down here, start at the top, get that, and then work your way down. Just peeling away the layers of the onion, that builds confidence in the partners to be able to articulate that, and also be excited about it. Be excited about the opportunities that their partnership with the company I work for, what it will do for their business, and really be able to drive that to their customers. So I'm really trying to break it down into chunks that partners can digest. Because one thing I've learned over the 5 years at RingCentral is that partners come in about every shape and size you can imagine.
Yeah.
Some are very high level, and some are very, very technical and detailed, and everything in between. How do I meet them all where they are and move them along is where my primary focus is, because there's so much going on and so many opportunities for growth.
Yeah, and clarity. You know,
Yes.
it's confusing, especially from the perspective of us having so many service providers pulling at us. And a lot of times, even though we have several hundred service providers, there's a small 10% of those that we actually form relationships with and work. And so I think that it's really important to, for a partner to understand, where do you invest your time?
Yeah.
Where do you spend your time? And I think making sure that you're passionate about that as a partner, like I'm very passionate about RingCentral. Because I believe, you've led the market. We've had really successful projects, and I see how it impacts the customer and how much it can do. But I also am pretty excited about, when you deploy a UCaaS solution, I believe the gap in the industry is you deploy it. Most phone vendors in the past would just, okay, there's your system done. Well, we've created a professional services desk that we can go in and then evolve their system. You've got to pull in some of the new cool products and evolve it and look at the data and analytics. And that's a skill that is lacking. Customers don't have time to do that. So we're actually really getting excited about plugging in some of the new products and then reading the analytics and saying, oh, well, let's prioritize what needs to be done. And if we can tell that story with some of the marketing materials, that now we're getting somewhere.
Absolutely. And your organization is in a perfect spot to do that because, like you said, customers do not have time. They're just thankful they've got their systems up and running and they move on to the next big challenge. But you're that extension, your organization's that extension of theirs, being able to continue to look on the horizon.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always thought, the one thing that I've always thought about this industry is that it's best served by organizations like yours. No matter how good RingCentral is, and I think we're very good in so many different ways, the capacity to be that other arm to the customer is something that you bring in spades, and that's exciting. And that's what makes me excited to work with organizations like yours, because I can keep helping you and feeding you what you might need to make it valuable.
Yeah, I always say to prospects that haven't worked with Symplicity that we're your advocate. We're going to make sure the service provider does what they said they were going to do. We're going to help navigate the contract and negotiate that. And we're going to put in things that you didn't think of because we thought them 10 times with other customers, right? And so that's really important. And I always like to educate clients so that they're making the decision. I see a lot of people that kind of bully people. This is what you need to do. Just do this.
Just do it.
Right. And it's like, no. You really want to have them understand the differences and let the customer choose and then say, yep, that's what I would have chosen too. That's my favorite way to do it, is just let them feel, because then they feel so empowered. Like they understand why they're making the choice. And then you go down that road. So let's talk about innovation a little bit.
Yes.
How do you approach innovation in your role, especially because you're leading across regions and diverse markets? You talked about how different channel partners are. You've got some that are individual. They have got their little base of customers. They're the one person man show. You've got other organizations, I call them lifestyle agents, where they just sell enough to buy the boat that they want, right?
Right.
But then you have companies like me that have 42-page growth plans. We've got places to go, people to see, right? So there's a lot of different people. So how do you approach innovation?
Yeah. First of all, it's the one thing that motivates me every day is innovation. And I think that probably started from my product roots, and that I was constantly involved in being a part of what's the new next important thing to do. So it's in my blood. It's something that really motivates and excites me. The one thing that I learned, and I probably learned this when I managed the engineering team when I lived in London, and it was a global team. There were developers in the US and Australia, and is this you need to identify something that either needs some attention, whether it's because it's a new green field or it wasn't working and it needs to be refreshed. So focusing on that, focusing all your creative energies there, myself and team members. This is never just a single person situation. Absolutely. And then I have all the patience in the world for trying something the first time, learning from it, honing that if it's still something that seems like a viable solution, and honing it. But by the time we get to maybe 2 or 3 iterations, this is where I feel like the trick comes in, is that, yes, we've identified it works. Now we put it in our base of offerings, and we move on to the next one. And the difference I think I've seen with companies or individuals or teams that continually spin new innovation, but without the discipline to put it in to their core foundation, means they're constantly either solving the same problem multiple times, or they never quite. They spend so much time in that churn mode that they never have anything that just works. So I balance like the innovation, and I have all the patience for that, and then equally the patience to say, all right, now this needs to be part of our core function. We just do it at 100%, but we don't have to spend all of our energy making sure that it works because we know it works.
Right.
And spend our creative energies in the next thing.
And
I think that takes, it takes your foundation just keeps growing.
Yeah.
But your energy and the excitement and what most people want to work on is all the new things, the green field or the new things, but you're continually building, but at the same time, you're also innovating. And it's that balance.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Do you have any advice for young women entering the workforce that aspire to a leadership level?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do at the beginning is to develop your own personal work ethic, style, even your reputation. So, and build that, and don't be patient with yourself to be able to hone that, because you'll need that for the rest of your career. And you'll need that to naturally become an example for others, which then that moves you into leadership. If you end up being the one that is consistently delivering, is consistently providing what the company needs, is that consistency then almost naturally puts you in a position of leadership and mentor and being able to mentor. So I feel like it's got to start there. It's got to start with developing that work ethic that then you can leverage both to help others grow and move into leadership. I think it's tricky. I sometimes, and maybe this is unfair, but I sometimes feel that there's such an impatience at the younger generations, and I think that impatience comes from their desire to demonstrate that they can make a difference, and I think that's wonderful. And I'm not saying you have to pay your dues, but what I'm saying is there's a lot to learn as you make your way and asking lots of questions. That's the one thing I find that some of the younger generation don't feel comfortable doing because I think maybe they perceive it as a weakness. And I think it's just the opposite.
Yeah, agreed.
It's just the opposite. It shows that you're engaged and you're willing to learn and listen, hone those skills. It doesn't mean you have to do what somebody says, but it means that you're starting to develop that. And I also see that's something that I don't see very often is asking a lot of questions.
Well, and I think questions means they're curious.
Yes.
Curiosity is a huge strength in business. And so you don't have to look at questions as, well, I don't know the answer. Yeah. Well, that's okay. We all don't know the answers, right? But I think what you mentioned about you're kind of early in your career, you're honing your characteristics, right? But as we think about brand, you're in marketing, you have a brand. And when we were just together at this event, somebody said to me, I'd met her before on previous conference, but I didn't know her well. And we sat down and had breakfast. And she said, I want you to know, even though I'm on the East Coast, I know that you have an incredible reputation. The way you do things. And I have people asking me, how can I work with Catherine? She's, and it's funny because my reputation of the company is something that I work very hard on. I really want people to know we do the right thing, even when nobody's watching, because I just believe that karma's watching always, and she doesn't forget an address.
No, never.
But I think that you have to separate yourself from the brand. You have a brand. Catherine has a brand. And I want people to understand, especially young people, make sure you're always focused on your brand. And even when you're out at a conference and maybe you're having dinner, people are still meeting you and still learning about you. It might be the first time they meet you. And so, that's one thing that I think people could think about more. I think if I told my younger self, what would you do better is recognize that I have a brand earlier and making sure that I'm always making choices that go well. And sometimes, we have, as strong-willed, I'll call them strong-willed women, determined, I can be a little snippy sometimes. And I think I tell this to my staff, if you're working with each other and maybe you're having a bad day and we don't know why you're having a bad day. Your dog could have died this morning and we don't know why you're snipping at us. But if you owe somebody an apology, just do it.
Just do it.
Just own it, right? And so sometimes I think about that if I snip at somebody, that I stop and go, you know what? That's not fair. Me having a bad day is not fair for me to not tell you good morning or whatever, maybe. But your brand, that could be the only time somebody interacts with you.
I love that. That's fantastic. I was thinking this morning in preparation for chatting with you, what would be the brand? And I say this of myself, and what I say to my sons is, I'm almost want to be a poster woman for working in corporate America with a heart.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That it is possible.
Do.
And you do that. It's like, yes, achieve high things. Yes, get the team to do things they never thought they could do. Surprise and delight themselves of what they can accomplish. Be honed in on what the business needs you to do and then achieve that. But do it with a heart. Do it with the fact that we're individuals. We're humans here. We're not robots. We're not. And I don't think you have to give your heart and soul. And that's what I want to demonstrate. And I have known that's been a criticism at times that, that Wendy's too nice. Yeah. She's too soft. She's too nice, But I think you don't have to get nasty to get things accomplished.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that there's different styles. Like I know for sure I've lost deals because I wasn't pushy enough as a salesperson. But I like to sleep at night. I like to lay my head down and go, I did the best I could. And, did I shed some tears over the years over deals that I've lost that I didn't see coming? Yeah. But at the end of the day, if I show up genuinely and authentically, and that customer sees me and wants to do business with me, I'd rather have that 100 times out of just getting one. In fact, we did lose an opportunity recently to another company, and I realized that customer probably wouldn't have been a fit for us because we work hard and
Yes.
we do care and we're kind to our customers, and we really, while we may make mistakes here and there, we genuinely show up and answer the phone and help. And this particular customer was making ethical choices in their RFP responses. And it's like, I don't know if I want to work with somebody that is like that because I don't know that they'll appreciate the value that we bring to the table. So I think that your brand of just yourself, and in my case where I own a company, I'm setting the tone for the brand of the company. There's elements that you can do, like my saying of doing the right thing even when no one's watching. That goes to say for the company too. And we talk about that as an organization. And I hear my staff say that to people, and I just love that because it's like, oh, they're listening. Does that mean we're perfect? No. But boy, do we like learning from our mistakes. When we do make mistakes, we will own them. And I always tell my staff, I will always have your back. I will pay an early termination penalty. If we miss something, I will write that check. But I will ask us to go back to the process and not do that again, because it's
Absolutely.
right. And I think that's where brand comes in when you start teaching staff at all levels that they themselves, their character, how they show up, how they raise their hand
Yes.
is important because we don't have success individually. It takes a village. If we're winning awards, it's because I've got people behind me doing so much work, that we're able to accomplish these things.
Yeah.
And I'm
absolutely.
so excited, Wendy. I don't know if you've heard. I think I mentioned it to you. Channel Visions magazine recently. This big project that we've worked on. We've done a couple episodes on it. It is still the largest RingCentral deal in the history of the company, but also in the industry because there's no other UCaaS companies that have had this large of a deal. And I know one of the other gentlemen, he came up to me at this recent event and said, I've got one that's going to be bigger when it closes. I said, okay, but I'm still got the biggest one right now. But it's fun. It's fun when these are competitors, but they're not competitors.
No.
You're cheering for them just as
Absolutely.
much, right? But I think all of the success that comes with that, and then to do this deployment when people didn't expect me.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times you sell them, but to actually implement it and implement
That's
it
huge.
well and have the customer go, that was really amazing. And then to get an award, we got the Channel Deployment Award of the Year.
That's fantastic.
2025, we are the Deployment of the Year for this project. And I am so incredibly proud of my team because they worked hard, like all of us, all hands on deck. I mean, I did an implementation. I went out and did some things. And it's like, I think about that going, okay, we can add technician to my title now. But don't you think over your career, it's the most impactful times were the ones where you raised your hand and did something outside your job description.
Absolutely.
So I think that it's important for people to hear, to say, yes, you have a job, but your character is that shows up to say, how can I help?
Yes.
What can I do? Oh, do we need this project done? I'll work extra.
Absolutely.
Don't always be looking for, if I work an extra hour, what do I get out of it? This is your career. It's a journey.
Yes.
you know, you want to hone that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk about some habits or mindsets or
yes.
daily practices that you do to help kind of sustain that momentum, like to keep you excited, to keep you passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah. I feel like my role, or the way I approach my role, is very supportive. So I feel physically, even sometimes, the weight of not just the team, but the 16,000 plus RingCentral partners that there are around the world. And so I start slow in the morning. And I do that intentionally. I don't know that I intentionally thought to do that, but I have now discovered I intentionally do it, which is I start slow because I know once I go, it's full steam ahead.
Yeah.
And so I spent over 10 years of my life living in the UK. So the one habit I picked up was tea in the morning. So I make a slow cup of tea just the way I like it, and spend some time, just drink that cup of tea thinking about the day or about myself or about what I need to do or my dog, my kids, you know. And it's that quiet time that when I need reserves throughout the day, I'll go back to thinking about that quiet time when I started. I know I don't do well just jumping up and going because I haven't given that time to myself, because as soon as I'm going, I'm giving to everybody else. So that's number one. Number two is I don't need a lot of friends. I just need a couple key friends that walk the walk with me and understand where I am in life and where I'm going. They're hugely important to me. I build relationships at work because we spend so much time at work. I really value the relationships I have at work because they become like friends in that environment. So I try and read. I'm not that great. I've probably got 3 different books on the go at one time. One is usually very fiction oriented. One is very, one is very self-help ish. I'm reading one about emotion code, the intersection with science and physics and our emotions. And anyway, it's fascinating. So those are sort of the key things. I always go on a walk. Everybody knows I'm a nature person, and so I always go on a walk, if not one for sure and maybe 2. But those are the key things: that quiet cup of tea in the morning, the walk of the dog, and connection with people.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, you've got to find your routine. I find mine is at the end of the day, that quiet time when I feel like everybody's sleeping and I'm not ready to turn the light out. I love that time of day.
I love it.
Reflecting. And the only thing I wish I was a journaler. I wish I would take time to open a book and say, what did I like? What did I not like? What was a cool thing that happened? And because I've done so many amazing things in my life.
Oh my gosh.
I wish I was a journaler.
Yeah.
That's,
then you would have that to look back on.
I know, I could read it and go, oh my gosh, I probably forgot more than I've done. I know. Right? Yeah, it's crazy. Let's talk about a non-negotiable in your leadership approach that you really learned the hard way.
Ooh.
I know.
Well, I know anybody listening to this that worked with me at my previous job, the small startup, knows what my non-negotiable is. And so they would laugh. It has to do with certain words you use in the workplace. And some words are fine in a stressful situation. There's a couple words that are absolutely off the table. I just refuse to have them spoken in my presence. And it happened at least twice. And it was not a good situation. So respect in the workplace. You might not agree with me, Catherine, but I respect you and you respect me. And so I would say, and I think that those words are just an indication of respect for, who's there. So I think that would probably be the most important one. And when it gets crossed, it's a really clear indication that something's majorly broken.
And I think that's something for people to pick up on is emotional intelligence, right?
Absolutely.
Knowing your audience, knowing who you're around, and especially when you go to conferences, there's a lot of, conferences start early in the morning and they go all day, and then they go into dinner, and there's usually a lot of alcohol and which then comes a lot of free flowing conversations.
Yes.
But I always tell my staff, you're representing the company, and we have clear
Absolutely.
expectations. And I also feel like, alcohol is expensive. If you're going out to dinner with a service provider and they're providing you dinner, and then you have drinks and drinks and drinks, not only do you get loose, this isn't your friends.
No.
These are business associates. And so I think really kind of reading the room to say, I want to be respectful of their budget.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So having a drink, maybe a second glass, but never really. And I watch people just really inappropriately do that.
Absolutely.
And not only do they act differently because of it, but they also, that's really not fair, to run up a budget like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think you just gave a gift to your team by saying that, because you've helped them to navigate, especially if they're younger or newer to the workforce, help them navigate those situations. I think especially for women, for you to have set that tone, it means they can comfortably know that they're doing the right thing because you've done that. So that was a huge gift to your team. To be able to do that. I've been in plenty of situations where you have to do it after the fact, and that's never a good conversation to have.
No, really not. And I think that, there is a balance between, as an agent, marketed development funds and stuff. Yeah. One of the reasons I'd like to think that we have a really good reputation is because, I spend it like it's my money. If I want to do the most we can with the dollars that we have, and to just, blow it on a golf outing and all the drinks and, unlimited bar. It's like, that's not the best thing for me to be able to do. So, so I think that's really important, to be thinking about the emotional intelligence of what's your audience and how should you behave. Yeah. And then it takes it all the way back to your brand that we started at the beginning of the conversation of they'll remember you if you're the one that got a little, I can still tell you a conference that I went to 15 years ago. We were in a bus being taken over to one of the other buildings at the conference. And one of the gentlemen, I know that he wears Spider-Man underwear because he was drinking too much and decided that the pole in the middle was to be used. And it was probably a mistake that his belt didn't work properly and came down. But it's like, I shouldn't know that, we're sitting on the bus going in it, especially because I'm the barely drinker in the room, and I'm like, I would be so mortified if something like that happened to me, and so I think that I use those lessons of others to say, I don't want to behave like that, so it's important for us to, especially as women, sometimes women don't dress necessarily appropriate, and it's like, you're not going to the bar. You're going to a business event. Yeah.
And I noticed that in this industry more than my two previous industries. It was as far as this dress code situation, and it's confused me constantly because I guess I wasn't there in the beginning, so I don't know how this came about, that the way women dress. Anyway, so I liked what you said about emotional intelligence. It made me think of something you had asked me earlier about global teams and how do you manage global teams. And the one thing I learned, and I think I learned it probably when I did an exchange program in college, and you always hear about the American, the rude American, all of that sort of stuff. So I was hypersensitive. But what I've try and do is do exactly what you say, which is, I can set the stage or the standard or the strategy. But I will be probably the last one to say, in this particular country, with these particular individuals in this different business model, you have to execute just like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You have to trust that you've set the right tone, and then because that ensures that you are meeting people where they are culturally, where they are economically, where they are. And so that's, when you said emotional intelligence, I think sliding your foot into somebody else's shoe is the best way to sympathetically work in other parts of the country, or, even other states in the U.S. that you're less familiar with.
Yeah, totally. Because you just don't know the background, right? You don't know somebody's religion or culture or norms. And I've studied international relations when I was in school, and French and Japanese were my languages. And, especially when you hand a business card to a Japanese person, they don't just hear. It's very respectful of how you hand that over. And so you tend to know when people have been trained in that international relation, because you'll see them, you'll behave differently, and you'll stop and go, how should I address this person? So I think it is really important to kind of think about where you are and where you want to go, and how do you want to be known, right? How do you want people to think of you? And when I recently had that conversation, and she said, Catherine, you need to know you've got such a great reputation. I've never met you, but I feel like I know you because so many people talk about you this way. And I'm like, that's amazing to hear, because I've worked very hard on that. I really make sure to, to make sure that we always are trying to respect the service provider, what they bring to the table, my master agent, Intellisys,
absolutely,
and my company, it's a three-legged stool, and how can we take this village and be successful? And that means that you're adding a lot of different people into that mix. So,
which I love. And I love the fact that you've done it in your unique, in your way, not the way that is somehow prescribed by the industry, right? That's what I love the most about what you've been able to accomplish with your company and yourself individually, is just you've done it absolutely your way.
Yay. I love that. So as we start to wrap up, these episodes go so quickly. Outside of work, what's one thing that always brings you joy or clarity?
Oh, nature. Whether it trees, grass, birds, animals, flowers, the air, the clouds, sunsets. That's where I go to connect with the Wendy that I aspire to be, as an individual, as a human on this planet. And so that's where I will always go, is to reconnect with myself, who I am, and with the world around me, because so often in what we do, we're moving so quickly and so head focused. And I need to move down into the heart and the gut. And I do that by going outside.
I love that. Stop and smell the roses, right?
Definitely.
I love what you said there. The Wendy that you aspire to be. So if you think about that, this is such a journey, right?
It is.
And we don't know when the journey ends. We don't know if we get 10 more years, 50 more years. My grandmother passed away last February, a year ago February, and she was 99 years, 9 months, and 9 days old when she passed away. That's amazing. That was like a universe speaking thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, here I am in my 57th year, and it's like, I think about, might I have that much time? But it's, you want to do the best you can. But I love thinking about, who does Catherine want to aspire to be? And That's a great little tidbit that I want to take out of this episode. Thank you so much
You're
for that.
welcome. You're welcome.
Awesome. And thank you for listening to Symplicity Conversations. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and visit us at thesimplepodcast.com to connect and learn more from inspiring leaders like Wendy. Follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.